Just put it up on top. Nobody's gonna notice stuff there. Just like, yeah, why not?
Can you pronounce that word one more time?
So Tlapoaloni. 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 So yeah, in the first class we covered the sounds of the Nahuatl language and the way that you can, the orthography, the way that you spell particular language. So okay, we decided to go for a more phonetic route when it came to the actual orthography, just to make it easier for pronunciation. I know in the classical style, certain letters were used more often, like the Z's and things like that, and it just like, you know, if it makes sense from a 16th century Spanish mindset, but for today's modern, you know, Nahuatl learners, it's not as useful. So we decided to go with something that's a little more more practical. And so yeah, so in terms of the sound, so la, so basically the vowels are the same as in Spanish, a, e, I, o, right? Poaloni, tlapoaloni. So the numbers. But yeah, so whenever we do the recap, we'll cover that at greater depth. And
Daniel,
yeah.
this is running
Off the website.
Off of the website. Okay.
Yeah, so you just have to scroll down. Okay. So general facts about the Nahuatl numerical system is that it is an independently derived indigenous numerical system. It was used for thousands of years by several different tribal groups, and originally, as far as we can tell with regards to like archaeological evidence, it went back to the age of the Olmecs. So it's old, thousands of years. And its system is really, really basic, but it's also very precise. It's a digestible system, which is a 20-base system. Basically, in the same way that we use a decimal system in the Western world, bases of 10, right? They use the digestible system, which is a base of 20. And I'll show you exactly how that works in terms of the counting of the numbers and how that breaks down. But really what it is, it's a reflection of mathematics that shows the reflection of nature and our place in it. So we have 4 parts to our body, 4 limbs. We have 5 fingers on each, and so a culmination of 20. Where there's a sense of duality within everything, bilateral. So there's special numbers that correlate to particular aspects of nature, and that is reflected in the language. So the way things are broken down linguistically, you will see that as we go through the numbers. So originally the script, the way that you would write the numbers, were very simple. So use the dot to represent 1, a bar to represent 5, and then this little sort of football-looking thing is actually like a shell. So it represents 0, the concept of nothing. So before the Arabs had a concept of cero or zephyr, like we had an understanding of 0. And the mathematics is like I said, it's very precise. In older degrees of mathematical projections, we had what they call number by superposition. So, I mean, if I had a drawing board, I'd give you a deep example. But what it represents is like sets of numbers and supersets of numbers, which allow people to create a large quantity of number with a little bit of space. So, for example, this right here represents 500. And I can show you later on paper how that works. But for the sake of the class, just know that these were the ways that were marked, which is really easy. I mean, you can do it on sand. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 5, right? So, yeah. But it allowed for really precise calculations. It allowed us to follow the timekeeping in terms of like the agrarian cycle. We used it for architecture, mathematics, for being able to build resonant systems. You know what I mean? Like it's really astounding just the level to which people can use the math to create, you know, and timekeeping and being able to map the stars and know when to plant, all that sort of thing. Any questions? Just yes.
What is 500? You said.
So this set of numbers here represents the concept of 500 in numbers by superposition level. So essentially
that
this.
Was written consecutively.
Yeah. So our numbers were written from the bottom up because like things grow that way, right? So in the same way that for example here the American system or the Western system, the numbers go to the right, right? So if you add a 0, add a 0, add a 0, the number's bigger. Whereas for ours, the numbers went up. So the bottom represented a set of between 1 and 19. These ones are sets of 20, and this one is sets of 400. It's mathematical sets of like integers. So basically, from 1 to 19, 0 to 19, and then sets of 20, so 20, 40, 60, 80, all the way to, and then sets of 400, and it kept going as far as you could count. So the mathematics is really, there's no limit. Next slide. Okay, so Tlapualoni. So for those who don't know, in terms of the actual class, the variation of Nahuatl that the variety of Nahuatl that we're speaking, that we are teaching, is specifically one from the community of Copalillo Guerrero. So in different communities, you might have different ways of representing these numbers, in the same way that you might have different ways to represent certain concepts, right? But ultimately, they all share the same backbone because the numbers were established, long time ago. So for example, the first concept, 0. In Copalillo Guerrero, they say Xtla. Did everybody say Xtla? Xtla is 0. It literally means, so tla is like something, that X in the front is a negation. So it's saying not something, the absence of something. Nothing, 0. Xtla, right? First number, se. Se, right? Can anybody repeat? Se. Se. Number 2, ome. Ome. Concept of duality. And you see that a lot in the concept of ometeo, ometecutli, omeyoka, and stuff like that. 3. Now 3 for Guerrero, and in various different communities in Nahuatl communities, 3 is the one that tends to have a different sound depending on where you're from. So in Copalillo they say yeye. Yeye for 3. And in some older or classical or more central, they might say yay or yeyi, right? But always a sense of like yay, yay. So yeye is 3, right? 4 is nawe. Nawe, or nawi in the classical. 5 is maquili, or maquile. And this, I've noted the colors just to give you reference to the way the numbers are broken down. So you'll see se, ome, ye, nawe to represent the 4s that constantly shift, the 4s that tell you where the numeral changes. So for example, from maquile, you go to chiquasen, right? Chiquasen represents, chiqua represents to 5, or like, it has a phonetic relevance to 5. And then sen tells you that it's adding 1, right? Chiquasen, it's like 5 and 1. Chiquasen. Chicome, right? Chicome is 7 because it's 5 and 2. Chikyeye, or chique, is 8 because it's 5 and 3. So these phonetical markers you'll be able to know and recognize when you hear the number, you'll hear the ending, and that'll help you construct what the number is numerically. So Chiquasen, Chicome, Chikyeye, Chicnawe, Matlacle. So you'll notice this ma and ma both have origins in the concept of hand, which is mic. So ma is hand. Maquile is like saying like the worms on your hand, like literally 5, right? You have 5 of them. Or also maqui, from qui to grasp. So the things that you grasp that are on your hand, 5. And matlacle refers to the basically the torso of your hand, or like the concept of like you're bringing your hands together, which is 10, right? So matlacle represents that, and that's so those you can kind of tell that those are like the quartering spaces in between 0 to 20. With me so far? Any questions? Okay. And then so from matlacle to get to 11, we have this addition, literally an addition. So the word iwan represents and with, this concept of, of with, so plus in that sense. And then the singular numbers just get added on. So matlacle iwanse is 11. Matlacle iwanse. Some communities don't have that hard I, so they might say matlacle wanse instead of matlacle iwanse. But in terms of people who understand and hear the language enough, it's like an accent. You recognize that you're talking about the number even though it sounds a little different. So matlacle iwanse is 11. Matlacle iwanome is 12, right? Because 10 and 2. Yeah, with me so far? Matlacle iwanye or matlacle iwanyeye. So a lot of that really depends on your community as to particularly how that sounds. But yeye is the Copalillo Guerrero Nahuatl that we're learning currently. And matlacle iwanawe, right? 14. 15 has its own word, cashtoli, right? Or cashtohle. Cashtohle. Galenche wanted me to make a note to remind people that in terms of the way your community perceives the concept of the numbers, that also changes. So in some communities, they might say matlacle iwanchicuasen, right? It's a little longer to say, and it also, this is a lot more traditional, right? But this has the same concept as castoli. So if you say matlacle iwanchicuasen, you're literally saying 10 plus 6, right? 16. But in the sense of in the majority of Nahuatl speaking communities, cashtoli or cashtohle is going to be the integer that you, or the value that you use for the concept of 15. And then again, like the others, you add iwanse, iwanome to add to 15 to create these higher numbers as we get to so does anybody want to try how to say 16? You, man?
How to say 16?
Yeah. It's this one right here.
Kakochli iwanse.
Kashtohle
Kashtohle.
iwanse. Perfect. Yeah, that X makes a sh sound.
Kashtohle.
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 Yeah.
Iwanse.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Did you want to try the second one?
Kashtohle iwanome.
Yeah, perfect. You, sir?
Kastosle iwanye.
Yeah. Sweet. Sir?
Kashtohle
Yeah. Okay. And this one, right? So once you've got all the way to 19, the word for 20 is simple wahle. Remember I told you that the decimal system is a base 20 system? Simple wahle literally means one count, or one complete count. So se, right, goes back to that original concept of one. So simple wahle is saying one count. One count is a set of 20, right? So, and that's how you get to 20. And as we go to higher numbers, we'll show exactly how all that stuff expands. But is there any questions with regards to the numbers? Any, I mean, it's pretty straightforward, right? Literally, it's like, if you're counting with your hand, then you consider your hand one set. And then count with two hands, and then you consider two sets. And then you count with two hands, and then you get to that third set. And then you count, you know what I mean, to that fourth set, and that becomes one complete set. So literally, you see the partition in 4. So this concept of breaking into 4 of a complete set is also relevant to the cultural concept of the numerical metaphysics. How the numbers are relevant in a semantic way that ties back to the way that the world is divided, how time and space exists in that sort of quadripartite setup. You know what I mean? 4 directions, 4 elements of nature, things like that. So they reflect other aspects of the culture. Next slide, please. Okay, so we already got to simple, right? And no surprise that in order to continue, you do as you would with 10, and you add 1, you add 2, you add 3, you add however many you need to add in order to make the number that you're adding. So for example, I don't have it up here, but how would you say 30? Yeah, exactly. So you would say simple wale, iwan matlaple. Because you're literally saying 20 plus 10, right? These sets are already in larger forms. You don't have to like break them down any further. So yeah. So does anybody want to have a try saying the second one? You, miss. Yeah. I'm sorry, I don't know y'all's names, so I'm Daniel. Just throwing that out there.
I'll try
Okay.
Simpotle iwan ome.
Aha. Simpotle iwan ome. Next one.
Why don't you say your name when you speak?
Oh yeah, yeah. That way I can start picking up y'all's names.
Maggie.
Maggie.
Simpuahle iwan ume or yeye.
Yeah. Exactly. You sir?
I'm Richie.
Richie. Hi Richie.
Hi. Simpuahle iwan nawi.
Yeah.
Eric.
Okay.
Simpuatle iwan makuitle.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Simpotle iwan makuitle. So basically, following this same guideline, you can add the continuous numbers, right, as you get to higher numbers. So what would be the number after this?
Iwan.
Chiquanse. Sempoatle iwan chiquanse.
Chiquasen.
Chiquase.
Chiquasen. Simpotle iwan chiquasen. Perfect. Yeah, exactly. And your name, sir?
I'm Andrew.
Andrew. Nice to meet you. So yeah, so basically, so this isn't too far off the stretch, right? So essentially, if you're gonna continue with the numbers, you have to add the additional numbers until you get to the next set, right? So after Simpoatle iwan makuitle, you go to Simpoatle iwan chiquasen, Simpoatle iwan chicome, Simpoatle iwan chique, Simpoatle iwan chicnahue, and then so Simpoatle iwan yeah, exactly. So this represents 39, right? So 20 plus 15 plus 4, right? So Simpoatle iwan castohle iwan nahue. So this concept represents 39. Now, how do you go from 39 to 40? So remember how we talked that Simpoatle represents one set of 20, right? One count?
Omepoahle.
Yeah. So you could say ompoahle or omepoahle, and that gives you that concept of two sets of 20, right? And depending on the community you speak of, that pronunciation, you can probably use them either interchangeably or use one or the other, depending on the preference of the community. So, so sempoahle is one set of 20, right? One count. Ompoahle is two sets of 20, so 40, right? Yeyepoahle is three sets of 20. And successively you add those particular numbers prior to the poale to give you the set of 20 that you're talking about. And basically it doesn't become all that hard to say whatever number you want. In this example, I also want to show that there's also larger sets of numbers. So for example, this is the most that you can say before you get to a larger set when you're talking about like using the poales, right? So castohle iwan poale iwan castohle iwan nahue. So literally you're saying it is a mouthful, and this is one of the reasons why I've noted before that these sets, these higher numbers, are rarely used in indigenous communities contemporarily because it's so much easier to say 399 instead, and not have to say and in some communities those sense of the larger numbers they're not expressed. It's a lot easier to just say it in Spanish, and so that does become more of a norm. But in the traditional way, these were the larger integers for that concept. So castohle iwan poale is literally saying 15 plus 4 sets of 20, right? Castohle iwan poale iwan castohle iwan nahue, right? Which is 399. But in order for you to bump up, there is this concept here of sensontle or sensontle. Have you ever heard that, amo el canto del sensontle? Sensontle refers to the concept of 400. And what it is 20 squared. So it's it's a superset. In the same way, yeah, and that's how you build on from there. So sensontle is one set of 400. How would you say two sets of 400? Onsontle, right? Three sets of 400. Yeyesontle, or yesontle, right? Then these larger numbers grow. So, and eventually you'll get to the point where you say, okay, 7,999. You've used up all the ways that you can use all your Sontles together and all your Bohuahles together and all your individual numbers, and you have a larger set that is Shikipili, Sen Shikipili, Shikipili, Yes Shikipili, and literally it goes on. But just so you guys know, it's there for reference. But communities in the modern day rarely need to go this far, right?
Count up to like 20.
Yeah, most communities count up 20 in most cases, or even beyond, and then beyond that, you might move to Spanish.
The sin is, in Latin is 100. Is that some kind of?
It shares no linguistic root.
No, not really.
No.
Okay.
No, it shares no linguistic root. That's a good question, but no. Like the word century, stuff like that. No. This is completely different linguistically, so it's not related at all. But so se and so this n, or sometimes you'll see an m, right? Sen. These are more phonetic markers that are for what they call euphonics, to make it sound better. So instead of saying se shikipili, that n just sort of softens the transition between the actual number and the number modifier. But yeah, so any other questions?
I just have a comment.
Yes.
Me llamo Silvia.
Hola Silvia.
Sensontle, yo siempre pensé que era el mockingbird.
Yes, porque sensontle comes from the word sensontotot. Sensontotot is literally
The bird of a thousand.
a bird of 400 voices, and sensontle. Yeah, so when
Yeah, I was wondering if you were going to say.
so when Nezahualcóyotl said Newa niklasotla in sensontotot ikuik. So he said, I love the song of the sensontle, literally of the mockingbird. The reason why they call it sensontotot is because it had 400 voices. It could imitate, and 400 in a metaphorical sense of like multiples, a numeral that is as high as, you know, Kastole Juana, Powale Juan, Kastole Juana, but you know what I mean, like plus more. Extra. Exactly. So that concept of sensontle in that sense it's metaphorical to say like almost innumerable, uncountless.
Y
You
en
know what I
español
mean? Like
mockingbird es sensontle, ¿verdad? From the Nahuatl.
from the Nahuatl. Sensontotot,
Sensontle.
because the word totot is bird. Yeah. Good comment. Any other questions? No. And I think we've got.
How would you say 50?
How would you say? Okay, cool. Now we can ask questions as to like if we're getting a handle on how the language works. That's actually a good opening. Okay, yeah. So how would somebody say? Does somebody want to try to say the word 50?
I'll give it a try.
Yeah.
Ompuacle Iwan Matlakli.
Yes. Can somebody say 67? Okay. Yep. No, Chicome. Yeah. 66. Yeah. Let's see. This is good. Now let's try something a little bigger. How would you say 100? Maggie?
Yeah, I'm not going to ask.
Okay. So just so since we're counting to 100, we're using Pohuahles, right? Because it's going to be what we consider like an even number in that sense. And sets of 20. How many sets of 20 would you need to make 100?
It's there.
Yeah. Yeah. Trying to think. How about 250? Who wants to try and give 250 a shot? It's okay to write it down and then build it up yourself. Yeah, I know the higher numbers tend to be a little harder. Okay, let's go to an easier one. Who wants to say 7? Come on. How do you say 0? There you go. Yeah. 0 tends to be the one that's most ignored, just because, I mean, you know, you hardly reference it when you're referencing numbers. But yeah.
It's like you're blowing somebody off.
You're absent.
You
Yeah.
get nothing.
Or you could probably say like, like you're nothing.
Yeah, that's the fun.
That would be real
kinda like
mean.
the fun part about the way that they I don't know what is that anything you wanna like negate anything, it's just like shh.
Yeah. Yeah. Did we want to go on to the continuous slide of that? So I think more or less we've got a sense of what that is, right?
Oh, that's the last one.
Okay. Activity 1 on your paper, I believe, is writing down what numbers are, right? So we can go through that just so we get a handle on how that works. So these are numbers that I have written out, and then you just have to write it out using the words that we've. Yeah.
It's in another slide.
What are you talking about? The activities? Oh, you're talking about the next set from here.
Yeah, the next step.
The next set, it's gonna be number 2 on the website. So if you go out of the page, it'll be on number 2 under preguntar-edad. You know, you literally just have to like back out. And then go down to you're right there. Preguntar-edad. So number 2 is right there. Now. So yeah, so once we finish this section, we'll continue on to how to use the number in conversation. So for those who have been here in previous classes, I see Ryan and Sylvia in the back. How y'all doing? Good. So definitely the classes build on each other, and this is also, it's going to be related to like some of the conversations that we've had in the past, but also it's not hard to pick up at all. So it's pretty straightforward. But yeah. So does anybody have the answer to number 1 on the activity, or A for? For 13?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Matlakli one ome is 12. Matlakli one yay is 13.
Thank you.
Yeah. Anybody want to have a go with number 2 or B?
Sembawali Iwan.
Yes. I don't even remember the number I put up. But yeah. I should have a copy, huh? Let me grab a copy of the activity. Yes.
Can you have 2 A1s in a number?
Yeah.
Okay,
Mhm.
so for 250, is it Ome makuil poahle iwan ome sempoahle iwan makuile?
Wait, say it again?
Math real fast.
Wait, for 250.
Yeah.
Okay.
Ome makuil poahle iwan ome sempoahle iwan makuile.
Yes.
These are an easier ways.
Yeah, no. Well, see, but that's why, that's kind of why people, yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's why people would say 250 pesos. You know what I mean? You wouldn't be like, yeah. I mean, it becomes sort of like almost a tongue twister, but not. And I think that's one of the reasons why, in terms of numerically, it's fallen out of use for the larger numbers, just because, you know, part of Nahuatl is its aspect of being clear and good sounding. It's the foundation of the language. Like, it's created to be easy to say, to learn, to speak. And so, especially as like from classical to current types of or varieties of Nahuatl, you've noticed there are some phonetic shifts, some things that have become a little less rigid, just to make the ease of pronunciation a little better. So in some communities, you'll have like hard I's turn into soft E's, and that's normal, and that's just part of the language is being clear and useful. So like in a lot of communities, you would say like 250 tomin, to say like 250 pesos, right? Like, yeah. But yeah, that's right on the money. What about number C? Oh, I think we already covered it, yeah? C? Perfect, yes.
So is a H is like a sound, or is it can it be silent?
Well, so for our orthography, the J that we've established, the J represents an aspiration. So it's not a heavy, it's like a soft.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So and especially once we get into like plurals and things like that, which we will cover with the numerals and examples of that, the H is soft. So it's not really, but you know, some communities might make it a little more pronounced, but generally J's, when we write it out, it's like a Spanish J. So it makes an H sound, an English H for the most part. Yeah. Let's see. ¿Qué más? Okay. Did we want to start with the second set of the class? So our second set of the class is going to be using the numbers that we've learned to express your age and ask people their age. And you know, and we'll. I know it's a tender subject in general, and you don't have to tell me your real age if you don't want to. I mean, I'm sure.
Well, mine is so easy.
Right? Yeah. Or make that the case. I'm just gonna round it. But yeah. So preguntar edad, asking someone their age. These slides are bilingual just to make it easier for. Are there any? There's no Spanish speakers only, right? Currently in the class. Okay. I make it sort of trilingual to make that as easy as possible. Normally, Gaudencio would be our Spanish part of it, and I do the translating. But this is for the purposes of the class, since we don't have any Spanish-only speakers, then you know I'll just sort of lean on the English for that. If you guys have any clarifications needed in Spanish, just let me know. Okay. Could I get the next slide? Okay. So, wait, can you roll it down a bit? Wait, hold on. Okay, no, never mind. We're good. I just thought it looked like it was cut off for a second. Okay, so the question is, qu'est-ce que chifle ticpia? Qu'est-ce que chifle ticpia? So, qu'est-ce que, the classical is qu'est-ce, but qu'est-ce que is literally asking how many? How many? ¿Cuántos? Qu'est-ce que? Chifle is a metaphorical sense of saying, like, leaves on a tree, but it has representation of years. So, chifle is like, in ticpia is literally saying, so pia, the verb root is pia, which is to have. To have. Ti is you, is the prefix that represents you, and the k is like a ligature that connects ti to pia, and it's used on those particular verbs. I think they're intransitive verbs. Yeah, but and we will cover verbs like on a deeper level when it comes to that. But just so ticpia means you have, right? So qu'est-ce que chifle ticpia? How many years do you have? Right? So, qu'est-ce que chifle ticpia? Right? And the response that people would say, so, is naha nikpia, and then whatever the number is, right? This word here, shiwi, is years. Shiwi. So that X makes a sh, right? Sh. She-week. She-week. Right? So, in this example, naha nikpia sempuahle wan matlakle she-week. I have 30 years. I'm 30 years old. No? So, again, so naha represents the pronoun myself. I myself. Naha. Naha. Nikpia is, again, pia, right? The concept to hold. Ni is references to myself. I. Nikpia is I hold. So literally, you don't necessarily need this pronoun, but it's added for emphasis to say, me, myself, I hold so many years. In a metaphorical sense, you're saying that's how many years I have, right? And like I said, so shiwit represents years. In the classical, shiwit also represents turquoise and fire. It's used for several different words. So sometimes you'll find it in other words as like an adjective that can be used to say like turquoise or precious or flaming. You know what I mean? It just depends. But in normal everyday usage, shiwit represents years. So, for example, if I were just to tell y'all like nahaniktia sempowale wan chikome shiwit. I have 27 years. Right? Does anybody want to have a go at their age or just an age? Right?
Mine is simple. Nakamipia umwale lihuiti.
Chiwi. Ajá. Umpawale chiwi. ¿Qué es que xitleticpia?
Ni tipia, yei powali, chikwai,
Iwan chikway?
Iwan chikwai.
Okay. Man, I'll get your names, I promise. Eric?
Eric, yes.
¿Qué es que xitleticpia?
Najnikpia. Oh wait. No. Najnikpia means I have.
Uh-huh.
Najnikpia.
Remember that J is a nah. Nah.
Oh,
Nikpia.
Najnikpia. Najnikpia.
Uh-huh.
Omboa.
Boy. Okay, perfect. Richie.
Working on it.
He's like, I need more paper.
I'm passing.
Oh, Maggie, did you want to give it a qu'est-ce que xitleticpia?
Nahanikpia umwale iwan chikwaye.
Uh-huh. Ompoale iwan chikway. Shiwik.
Oh, I forgot that part.
Yeah, shiwik. So, I mean, you could infer that you're talking about your years, right? When you say, I have 33. Well, you could. Well, I mean, shoot,
In
I have
answer to
33
that
dogs at
question.
home. Like,
Well,
you know.
in answer to
it's-
that question.
Yeah, exactly. As an answer to the question, if you say I have 33, that's perfectly fine. Shiwit just gives, or you know what I mean, like whatever the number is. The shiwit at the end just gives like emphasis that you're talking strictly about years, and you know that's it. Silvia, did you want to give it a shot? Qu'est-ce que xitleticpia?
Nahnipia 66.
Shiwit.
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 Shiwit. So yeah, the other thing too, for all the new students, just so you guys are aware, so the stress on words are in the penultimate syllable, so the syllable before last. So for example, sempowahle, right? Nikpia. So this is where the stress goes.
Nahnipia.
Nah, yeah. Nikpia.
66.
Shiwit.
¿Cómo?
Shiwit.
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 Shiwit. Años.
Shiwit. Años. Perfect. Ryan, did you want to give it a shot? Qu'est-ce que xitleticpia?
Nahanipia simpohale iwan kashhole.
Okay.
I'll do that. Nahnipia, and then you can help me with my age because I have no idea. I'll say it in Spanish.
Okay, okay. Yeah.
Nahnipia 65.
65. So 65 would be Yehpowahle Iwan Macuihle. Ajá. It doesn't sound that bad when you say it in Nahuatl because you're doing it in sets of 20, right? Like,
Not many people understand.
it's Yehpowahle Iwan Macuihle.
Oh.
Yehpowahle Iwan Macuihle.
320 plus 5.
Yeah, exactly. 320s plus 5. It's not bad.
I just visualize counting cash.
I mean,
Like 21 bills.
but see, what I love about the mathematics in that sense is that now you can see how they could build pyramids and calculate the stars. You're like, okay, well, how many more? Another set of 20. Yeah, no, I mean it is like very structured, but I mean it's it's no different than any other numerical system. I just feel like it is easier to some sense, and like honestly, in my mind, I always imagined that like our ancestors did math with their fingers and toes, literally. Like, I mean, if you're wearing sandals, like you can use, like, I mean, I remember.
My grandma used to do that.
Yeah, I yeah.
Do
But then
that.
Venus is a 60-day cycle, right? So it goes into the astrology why it makes sense to break it down by 20s versus
Yeah.
10s.
Yeah, and I mean, in terms of and all that, like I remember one of the first times that I learned that sort of 9 times table trick with your fingers, and I was like, this is genius, like. But it's something like that. I could imagine the mathematics is definitely very structurally sound in a way that makes it really easy. So, but yeah. So,
Sorry,
did
is it
anybody
Venus
manage
is a 20
to
days
fill
cycle?
out their
16
their?
days.
Oh, yeah.
60
So
60
sections
or-
2 and 3 for the age. For now, let me grab my set. For set 2, we can already do, right? Because essentially it's matching the number with the word, right? So for our first example, Nahuatl, what number does that make?
80.
4 20s.
Yes. For B, Chicome.
8.
Oh no, 7.
Uh-huh. C, Castotle Iguanse.
12.
No.
16.
Castotle is 15. Iguanse, 15 plus 1, 16. And D, Matlacli Iguanome.
Almost 3.
Almost 2.
Is 2.
2.
Uh-huh. But yeah, so you get a fairly pretty easy understanding of like how the numbers, you build them up so that way, you know, it's Russian. But like I said, in most communities, Nahuatl speaking communities, beyond 20, that's actually probably a pretty good average. Like beyond 20, more than likely you'll probably use Spanish to represent those numbers because I mean it's easier, shorter, and you know, in most cases people will understand. So,
I think
so
I'm
for,
ready for the age question.
yes.
I think I'm ready for the age question.
Okay. ¿Qué es que significa?
Nahifia simpoahle ihuan gastohle ihuan ome shi.
Okay.
All the way.
That's good.
What did it
Good.
say?
Yeah. So you said Sempoahle, Iwan Castole, Iwan Ome, Shiwi? So that's 37? Yeah. Good job. Yes.
To say like 31, do you say Juan twice? Like for the like
Yeah, because you say Ompoahle, no, or you say Sempoahle, Iwan Matlakle, Iwan, what was it?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Was it?
It was the last
Six.
set for 1? Yeah. So basically, that question about how many Iwans can you put in a number? I mean, when we did the for $3.99, it had like 5 Iwans. Like the thing about Iwan is it represents the concept of width, so it's plus, right? In the mathematical models for like the actual writing, our ancestors used to say Ipan, which is like on top of. So that whole sense of like, well, actually, if we when we go back, I can show you how like the mathematical symbols of the dot bar and the line represent 500 because of the way that they're put on top of each other. So like I said, that 0 on the bottom represents 0 from between 0 and 19. There's 0, right? That's that next line up is 5. So 5 sets of 20, right? And then the top bar up on top is 1 set of 400. So can somebody do the math on that for me?
So real quick, how many people understand the concept of like the whole like adding the numbers going up? Because that took me a minute. Like the way you explained it to me,
Yeah.
or in the office, like making it took me that like he had to like do some numbers and like go up like 5 in order for me to really grasp
the
like,
concept.
the concept of how it works. So maybe like do the same kind of thing.
So yeah, no. So literally in the example,
The
yes.
second up, is that 20s?
Yes.
That's 20s.
So what it looked like on the paper was like 1 dot and then a line and then a 0 on the bottom, right? So if we're counting from the bottom up, like the 0 is anywhere from 0 to 19, right? And then once you hit 19, you have to put a dot above it. So it's 0 and a dot. 0 and a dot represents 0 sets of 0 to 19, and then 1 set of 20. So if you have a dot and a 0, that's 20. If you have 2 dots and a 0, that's 40. 3 dots of 0, and that's 60.
Because
right?
it's 20 squared.
Exactly.
It takes
And
you
then
to
once you
that
get to that 4, right? After 4 becomes a line, which represents 5. So if you have 0 and a line, that's 0 plus 5 sets of 20, right? Like let me.
So it's 1,000.
No. So 5 sets of 20. 5 sets of 20 is 100. Exactly.
And the 0 just.
And the 0 just means it's like a 0. It's like a 0 after. It's like a 0 here. You're like, okay, well, these zeros don't represent anything. It just means that the place is empty. This place is empty. So.
But like if you were to put something in that place, it would be like 503 if you did yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So if you put a 3, it'd be So a dot plus a bar plus a 0, it's literally saying sensontle iwan maquisbowahle iwan shla. So literally plus nothing. So it would literally be 1 set of 400 plus 5 sets of 20, and then nothing on the bottom. So that gives you 500.
Do some people leave off
The bottom?
the bottom?
The bottom is necessary because that's without the bottom you can't have the top. If you don't know how many are in the 0 to 19, you don't know how many sets of numbers you have to go up. You know what I mean? Like, because
it's holding a place like when you do decimal points, right? Like it's 0.01, right? That would be different than if you didn't have that 0.
Yeah, if you didn't have that 0 in that decimal, perfect example. Because without the 0, you wouldn't know how many tenths.
Hundredths or tenths.
Exactly, and this is like 20ths, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But it's 20ths up. So 0 to 19, and then, simple one, and then when you get to Castole Guanapowale, and then at that point you get Castole Guanapowale Iwan Castole Guanawi, which is 19, and then the next numeral up you'd have to put Sensontle, right? And then Sensontle Iwan Se, Sensontle Iwan Ome, Sensontle Iwan, and the numbers go up. But yeah, so numerically that's kind of how all that works.
So how would you say 571?
571. So you would say. Let me write that down.
Yeah.
So that way I can look. I need to look at it. Do you mind? 571. So sets of 20. So 13, 520, and then that is 51.
Which is
So
the 0 would be a 1, right?
So you'd basically say 13 sets of 20, right? Which gives you 520, right? Plus 51. So you would say,
Wouldn't you say 1 set of 400 first?
26
Yeah, what
sets
did you
of
do?
20.
wait, are you talking about, what was the number again?
Like how would you say it or how would you write it?
How would you write it? Like how would
Yeah, like
that
how
look?
would it? Yeah.
Oh, how would
So
it
let's-
look?
Yeah. So it
Okay,
would
so
be-
if you were to write 571, it would look like a dot of 400 right here, right? That's one, and then 100 is plus 3, 60, and then 70.
It would be 8 20s in the second line.
Right, yeah, exactly. And then, wait, so there's 400 here, and then 8 sets of 20. That's 160. So 5, and then 7, you said 60, 71?
71 would be 11 on the bottom.
Yeah, exactly. So, like that. So 11 down here. So 11 independent numerals plus 8 sets of 20, which gives you 160, plus 1 set of 400. But the way they would count it would be from the top down. So they'd literally say,
400.
yeah. So they'd say Sensontle, Iwan, Chigyeye, right? No. Matlakli Iwan Chigyeye. So, or no, it'd be Casto. Sorry, Castohle, Iwan. got me out of my place here. I'm trying to now I'm trying to think because when you say
Because it would be 11 on the bottom, and it would be, what did you say, 8 sets of 20?
8 sets of 20, so yeah, no, then it would be chiquieye powale. So chiquieye powale. Iwan, there we go. Iwan matlactle, Iwan se.
I think you should write that so that way you can show it to them. Because that was the only way I was really like grasping it.
Yeah.
Seeing how you would like
how the numerals
each sign would have its
yeah.
own, like a different.
And that's kind of why I wish I had the drawing board because I brought like dry erase markers so I could give examples on the board. But yeah, I mean it's.
Easel thing from the other room?
I don't think there's an easel.
Check.
Well, it's like, like
Because I think those examples will help me understand.
Because they have a whiteboard that's on the actual wall,
Yeah.
and that's what we had been using in the past. I thought we were going to use that room this time, but I was mistaken.
Sorry, the last line, how do you say 11? Matlatle Iwan se?
Iwan se. Matlatle Iwan se.
Yeah, there needs to be like you can draw on the computer.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of wish, like, if I had some sort of, like, adapter on my iPad, I might have been able to pull up something to connect it to. But, yeah, I mean, and in terms of the numerical, like, values, like, that's only what we know of in terms of, like, how they documented particular maths. Because I know of the, of all the writing that existed in this part of the world, like, there remains only...
He's got paper that's like this big.
Oh, really?
So that way you can kind of stand it up.
There remains only 13 copies, 13 codices in total of indigenous knowledge that exist. And only maybe a handful of them have numerical values that relate to stuff like that. The only reason why we know how the numbers of superposition work is because a lot of the Mayans, when they wrote down their stelas marking dates, they would do it on stone. You can't burn stone, So in a lot of instances, we know a lot of how the numerical system works because of the fact that there were monuments that were sculpted in the rock to give an account of how many days had passed since this particular person did this particular thing. And yeah, I mean, I think it's no, you're good.
Is the written form of like 8 a bar and 3 dots?
Yes.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
Is 11 2 bars and 1 dot?
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly. No, exactly. And that's kind of, so when you're talking about the integer, like, numbers by superposition are relatively easy when you're talking about the first 20, right? Because one number is one dot. The numeral 1 is 1 dot. 2 numerals is 2 dots. 3 is 3 dots. 4 is 4 dots. 5 becomes a bar. And then 6 becomes a bar and a dot. Right? A bar and 2 dots is 7. A bar and 3 dots is 8. A bar and 4 dots is 9. And then 2 bars is 10. 2 sets of 10.
Kind of like the
Makwili, right? Yeah, right? Matlactli.
Kind of like the numerical, just the 2
Yeah.
X's, but the 2. Okay.
Exactly. And then so obviously you go up until 19. So now you have Kastole, which is the 3 lines, right? Kastole Huanse, Kastole Huanome, Kastole Huanyei, Kastole Huanawe. And then Sempoale becomes a set of 20, one set of 20, and then 0 on the bottom.
So it's like this with the egg with the dot, that's 20?
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
I mean, I know we have Quizlet, but there are actual like flashcards that go through like the Aztec numbers, and then on the back it's like how you pronounce them as well as like the Spanish.
Yeah.
And I would have brought them because we got a decent amount of that when she was little.
That's cool. Yeah, no, and that I think if I get a chance, I will try to make those numerals into flashcards and add it to Quizlet if I can for our class. That would be really optimal. But here, let me grab a marker. I know it's dry erase, but it'll work. Yeah.
Where did you get these cards?
I think we got them at a market in San Francisco, if I remember correctly.
Obviously, my drawing isn't perfect. But I guess what we had was.
Now they're easy to find online or certain bookstores. So
this was the example that we had given originally of like how the numbers were, right? How this represents 1, this represents 5, and this represents the concept of 0, right? But in the placement that they are, because like I said, the bottom set represents from 0 to 19, right? Because like I said, when we count, that's 1, se, ome, ye, nawe, and then this becomes 5, makwili, right? And then chikwase, chikome, chikyeye, chiknawe, matlaki.
Well, that's confusing because it's on top of each other, like the like, yeah.
Oh, are you talking about like this? Well, the reason.
How do you distinguish?
How do you distinguish between? Because this is one complete set. So like, again, so that's matlakle, right? Matlakle wan se, matlakle wan ome, matlakle wan yei, matlakle wan nawe, kashtole, right? 15.
I guess, like, how do you know that that's not
An independent set.
Or like 4 times 5. 5 times 400 plus.
Because it depends on it's all context. It's all context as to what it is. If you see this number independently of anything else, that's telling you it's 15.
Over the bar.
Yeah, exactly. So for example, kashtole wan se, kashtole wan ome, kashtole wan yei, kashtole wan nawi. There's no such thing as a four-barred number. So at that point, kashtole wan nawi equals 19. That's the most that you can make out of a set. From that point, the next numeral up would be that little shell plus 1. So this tells you here, this is now one set of 20. And this is 0 out of 19, basically, because there can't be a 20 place. So it's almost like when you add another 0 here on the side to tell you what placement you are. So, but it's inverted, it's that way, because you're going up, right? So, so this represents the concept of 20 right here. So how would you say 21? Like that. One set of 20, and then 1 out of 19, basically. And then once you hit 19 over here, so
if you saw 100, how would you distinguish
between levels?
Between 10 and 105.
10 and 105?
Yeah. No, yeah. The number 10. And the number 105.
So the set of 10 would be this, right?
Yeah.
That's 10. 105. So that's 5 sets of 20, right? So that would be a bar here, and then I get what you're saying. Like that would look similar, right? But there's no, like this is considered one set. So for example here,
the spacing between them.
Yeah, it would basically be spacing. Okay. And that's one of those writing conventions that if you look at the few codices that do exist with numerical spacing, there is almost like an average space between sets that tells you that this is a set of 20 and this is a set of 19. You know what I mean? Or in this case 5. Yeah. But yeah, it's more about spacing.
Yeah, it's like learning that spacing between words, right? So if you're a messy writer, they could run together and it might be harder to tell.
Yeah, definitely. That's a very good question because that's definitely this looks similar to this, but this represents 10 and this would represent 105 in that sense. I'm glad that you asked the question, and I'm glad that you understand the concept of how the numeral system works. Because like I said, it is hard for people to get their minds around because it builds.
Very cool.
But yeah, so did we have any other questions when it came to the actual numerical system?
Yes. Andrew, yes, I think it's just like because I see like we reached the number 19.
Yeah.
And then to go beyond that, we're gonna go up. We're gonna go above.
Yes.
So we have 0 19s and a dot. That means we have 20. So for example, 2 dots above a 0 is 40.
Yes.
So then.
So then like 2 dots and like a 5 would be 45, right?
So for example, like you said, so you say we have a 0 on the bottom, right? How many sets can we fit on the second row?
up to
4.
400.
No. How many sets of 20 can we
4.
fit?
Like yeah, up to where
How
you
many
get
sets?
to up to you get to 100, like 400.
4.
No.
Right? Because the next line is 400.
No. So if this is 0 to 19,
Oh, 20s. That's right.
if this is 0 to 19,
But that would be
this row can this space can only fit 19 numerals.
19 individual
The
numbers.
next set can only also fit 19 numerals. So if you have a
19
0
sets of
here and
20.
then you have 19 here,
But, how many 20 is it?
But
That's
that
20.
would be
9, it would be
380.
9.
Right, because that's
yeah,
would be
19
but
sets
and then
of
you add
20.
19 here, right? Plus 3, what? What did you say? 80?
And I was saying like
Isn't it
that
in-
top
So that's
number,
$3.99.
like on top, like that 19 sets of 20 would be 380.
Yes.
Right.
Because then the next one would be 400.
400.
Exactly. So 380 plus 19 is 399. And so in order for so if you see two sets of 19, one on top of the other, so that's 19. This image right here represents 399, right? You have 19 sets of 19. I mean, 19 independent
19
numerals, and
numbers.
then 19 sets of 20. So that's 399. In order to go from here to the next set, you would have to put a 0 here, a 0 here, and a dot here, which represents 400 sets of 400. Yeah.
Okay.
So
That's cool.
yeah, and
Very cool.
same thing. Now you have 19 spaces that you can set 19 sets of 400, and that gives you to the next one, which is the shikipili. So if I did 0 and 0 and 0 and 1, that's one set of 8,000. Because once you hit 7,000, blah, 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 it adds up to the next integer going up to 8.
So the
Right.
zeros are only used when you're adding another level?
It's a placeholder, yeah. In the same way that zeros, this tells you it's 1,000. These 3 zeros only tell you, this is 10, this is hundreds, this is thousands. This tells you that what space you're on in that sense.
Right. What helped me was like the concept of how you do like 4 ones, then you put an X through it, and that means 5, right?
Yeah.
So that same kind of concept, but just with 20s. So my thing was like I had to, in order for me to understand it, was like how do you come up with a number like 343 or like 363? Because once you can see how that's written, then you get a little better concept
Yeah.
of like how do you explain each number in those categories. But I mean, theoretically, it's like it's the whole concept of like the 4 ones and the slash equaling
Yeah.
5, and then
And-
vice versa, like, continue to keep going up.
Yeah.
But in this situation, it's 20s.
And this setup also, it lends itself a lot to the language because
Yeah,
it's
that's
analogous.
what changes. What confuses you, like we're used to the lines and the slashes.
Right.
We're just not used to the dots and the circles and the lines
Yeah.
all combined.
And
Yeah.
then their calendar is also sets of 20s.
Mhm.
Yes, exactly. So I mean, it's definitely one of those things where you could conceive of larger concepts of numbers. We don't have records of what the next stage would have been larger than a shikipili because those don't exist on any of the records that we have. We see them on stones and we know that they exist. In the Mayans, they do because they did have exactly how they were said. In the Mayan language, they do have words for those because they've preserved that through oral history. So baktuns and stuff like that. You know the terms for the larger sets of numbers because they kept it in their timekeeping, despite the fact that all of their records were burned. Whereas
How about
like
the process to get to those numbers? That's what's not recorded.
the only thing that we have is what's left in stone. So like we know that the Olmecs had started, or at least they were as far back as we know that these numerals existed for their concept, and they did have a concept of like numbers by superposition as well. There's evidence of that goes back thousands of years, hundreds and hundreds of years before the Mayans were even the beginning of a civilization. So it existed for a long, long time, and we only know that because of the fact that there was something to dig up that had those numerals on it that made you go, okay, well, they used it for something. Like, but yeah, it's.
And how awesome to like turn 20 and not have to say.
Right? Yeah.
Happy birthday.
Yeah. Or no, especially if it's a larger, you like, doesn't sound too bad. Like, yeah, it's definitely, it's a lot of fun, especially when you actually go into, like studying the way that the language is infused with the culture, and you can't separate the two. And that's one of the reasons why, like, I love being able to share and help with the class is because as we teach and we learn, we pick up a lot of that oral history, a lot of the values that the people had and have as a result of what we've managed to preserve and what we take on.
And the shells, I mean, were they close to the seashore? You know, all.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah,
but
so
it like moved inland
Mhm.
too.
Well, you have to also remember that like trade routes were always established. I mean, even if you didn't live by the ocean, you still had access to shells.
Right, amongst a lot of communities, like my people back home, the Chumash and Tonga people, coastal people, shells were like currency, also for gaining. So that's why we used a
Enter
lot of
before
those
that thing, sorry,
for that
before
process.
it shuts you out.
Oh.
And then it's trickier.
I don't know.
Okay.
Just hit okay.
Oh, I think hit okay. We have plenty of time. Let me see. What was the next? Then we had a third set. Oh, okay, yeah. There's a third set of the presentations using the numbers with the concept of plural. So how to use it to refer to objects, to nouns, things like that. And let me see if we can get that set up as well. I'm glad that we had the opportunity to talk about the ancient numerical system because it is really cool. Okay, so examples of the numbers with their plurals. Now I'm going to explain kind of how that works. Okay, so some of you might not be aware because this was covered in earlier classes, building on the language aspect of itself. But so for the base nouns, so each noun ends. Most nouns end with 4 endings that tell you that the word itself is a noun, right? So TL, TLI, LI, and IN. So these are the 4 base suffixes that tell you that a word is an adjective. But for plural, that shifts, that changes, and we have these 3 plurals that you use for the nouns to tell you that these are plurals of a particular noun. Yeah, yeah, please. Oh, did we want to? I'll leave it up to the class. Did we feel like taking a break between, or did we want to just keep going?
How long is this?
There's one that might add hot chocolate.
Oh yeah. Did we want to take a little snack break before we really get into it? I could use a refresher.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think a few people might want some coffee.
Yeah, for sure. Alrighty then. We'll take a small 20-minute break or so, and then we will continue with the next portion of the numbers and focus. Bye.
All right, so we'll take a quick break then.